is the Bearcast, presented by Bird Culture Ford. Bird Culture Ford has been in Waco since 1936. Ford is the #1 selling truck in Texas 43 years running. The Bearcast is also presented by WellMed Medical Management and USMD Health System Dallas. Here's Craig Smoke and Grayson Grundhafer.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into a brand new edition of the Bearcast on Sic'Em365.com, Sic'Em365 Radio. I'm Craig Smoke, Sic'Em365 writer and also radio host, joined by Grayson Grundhafer, Director of Broadcasting, also team and recruiting reporter for Sic'Em365. And we've got a lot to talk about and unpack this week, from football and some new commits to basketball. Both the men's and women's, with up and down weeks depending on which game and which team you're looking at. And we've got some staff additions finally finalized as well to discuss, so we'll get into all of that. But first things first, Grayson, how we doing this week, man?
Yeah, busy week, right? I mean, with the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl, new staff additions, the commits, and tons of basketball, of course, and then tennis is getting going. So, yeah, a lot to kind of watch and cover for Baylor sports, and it's been a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, the news cycle hasn't stopped. We've had plenty to talk about and plenty to still look forward to as well, and plenty to, I guess, for some people and watching men's basketball, worry about right now as well. But let's start off with football. That's what we typically have as our bread and butter and what we talk about on each episode and focus in on. We will obviously talk other sports as well, but football is where we kind of get down to the most talking. And there was plenty of news again this week, Grayson. 2 new commits for Baylor football, some staff additions finalized, and some all-star games as well. But most people who are, premium members are there for recruiting, or a lot of them are. And there was 2 new commits to talk about this week, as Baylor added to their 2023 class, which is now up to 10 commits total. And let's start off with their first addition, as Micah Gifford, wide receiver out of Pflugerville, Weiss, is going to be, is one of the newest members of the Baylor recruiting class. Chose the Bears over offers from the likes of Mississippi State and Indiana and Pittsburgh and some others. 6'3", 185. That certainly turns your head a little bit. That's very good size. And I noticed with realignment last week in high school football, Midway finally out of the District of Hell, as they are no longer going to have to worry about, Duncanville and Cedar Hill and DeSoto all in the same district, which is what they've dealt with for the last 2 years. Not to mention that's bad enough, but then you had, really solid teams like Waxahachie and Mansfield Lake Ridge that were also in that district. And, they were all kind of by themselves, Central Texas team in this pretty much DFW type of district. Well, they got their realignment bid. They had their fingers and toes crossed that they would get out of that district, and they were rewarded. They are no longer in that district. Instead, it's a mix mash of teams further south and a little bit of the old district that they were in. So they're going to be playing teams like Temple once again, which will be nice, but also playing a team like Pflugerville Weiss. So I'll be seeing Micah Gifford, Lord willing, coming up this fall, as he will be playing against Midway, which is cool to know. But Micah Gifford, adding to the wide receiver room in the 2023 class. What can you tell us about him and your thoughts on what it means?
Yeah, so the first commit for Dallas Baker, I think that's a big note. Right, because he got hired and now he's well on his way recruiting, and he was brought in. A lot of people talked about his recruiting prowess, and here's a reason for it. And I think you watch Micah Gifford's film and you see a guy who's a really smooth and long strider, just a guy who really excels down the field. And I think he does a nice job changing gears as well with his speed, which is honestly a very underrated quality for wide receivers. Now, he's not a technician. He's not a high-end route runner yet. He doesn't look like Armani Winfield on film, but his speed over the top, his length, his size, his ability to make contested catches deep downfield is going to be massive. And I think if you watch him, you can kind of see that he'll probably play something similar to Tyquan Thornton in his time at Baylor, be a deep threat, but also hopefully later in his career really turn into a wide receiver one instead of just a deep threat, which I think Tyquan definitely turned into his final year at Baylor. So I really like this pickup. He had 893 yards, 13 touchdowns on just 44 receptions this year. I think he's going to have a massive year next year, probably 1,000 yards and another 13, 15 touchdowns. I just think he's going to continue to improve. And I think if you look at his track times, 14, 6, 7, 110-meter hurdle, that is really, really elite for a sophomore. So I'm curious if he's able to kind of capitalize that on keep the momentum going this year in track season. And I also think it's kind of funny because he was visiting Texas Tech this past weekend, and then he committed to Baylor during the week without having taken a visit. I think that's big news. I also think he just has great ties with Baylor. His brother is actually on the track team, Micah Gifford. He's an older, I think he's a senior now on the track team. So he's got ties to Baylor, but he didn't even have to take a visit before he knew that Baylor was the place for him.
I guess Tech should have rolled out not only Ric Flair, but the rest of the four horsemen. Get Arn and Tully and, whoever you want the fourth member to have been over the years, Barry Windham or Sid Vicious or something like that. In all seriousness, though, yeah, that's big for Tech to have recently hosted him. And, they've got the off-season momentum because they've got the new hire, and so they've really been pumping that up. And for him to visit somewhere and turn right around, I know Baylor's been on the receiving end of that before, so that's pretty big, that they made that kind of an impression on him. Tech amongst his offers and, a handful of others. But Micah Gifford, one of the latest commits to the Baylor 2023 class, and the first wide receiver commit in the 2023 class.
Yeah, and when I did my evaluation for him, I actually have him kind of right in the middle of this class, and he's very, very close to being a four-star prospect in my mind. I just think, the offers are there, the early offers. I think if obviously if he didn't commit to Baylor, I think more offers would be coming. But a lot of high-powered offenses offered him, and they see kind of what he can do on the outside, the perimeter at that wide receiver position, and then the speed. I see all the traits there for him to be a really, really successful college wide receiver. And yeah, like you said, he's the first wide receiver in this class. I expect them to take at least 3, but based on Dallas Baker's tweet, it looks like they might be taking 4 wide receivers because he had, I think he had 4 emojis and then one was turned into a bear. Forgot what the other 3 were, but I think there's 3 more spots, it seems like.
Yeah, that would be...
That's a big class, honestly.
Yeah, pretty big class. And, I'm going through like these reviews and it's hard because I'm trying to be as detailed as I can. I'm not like, Sam or Travis where I'm an X's and O's guy, but kind of just like loose, like my eyes and my opinion and what I'm watching. And in doing so, it's taking me a little while because I'm trying to be like thorough, and cross T's and dot I's and all of that. And I'm also looking ahead a little bit in these articles as well. And I haven't gotten all the way to finishing off wide receivers. I've kind of started all of them and then, kind of finish them off, here and there. And I'm on cornerbacks right now, and they got a lot more depth there at corner, like young depth than I realized because we've gotten so used to seeing the same guys like for the last 3 years basically. We've seen Raleigh and Caitlyn, and now we're seeing Al
and Mark Milton
Milton, but that's pretty much it. Like you forget, like there's like 7 corners that are all just sitting back there, and we forget about them. But it's kind of like that with wide receiver as well. Like we've seen Tyquan and RJ, and then we got a little bit of Drew Estrada this year. But there's like 8 guys that we've seen like little to nothing of outside of like a special teams rep or a random pass. It's a lot of proven, but there's a lot of guys there. So what that says to me is that they need to just kind of revamp that group anyways. But like there's a lot of guys that like better get on their horses and boogie this season, because if they're going to take 4 receivers in this class, and we know they've took some last year, they're going to keep that going until they land on a group. So, we've said it before, but it really does, repeat bearing this spring. Some of these receivers are going to have to really get a little bit of giddy up in their step, I would think.
Yeah, and they took 2 in last year's class, but it was 2 very high-end guys with Neighbors and Winfield. And then the class before, they took 6.
That's what I'm saying,
6 prospects. Now, one of them, in fairness, was Drew Estrada, who was like a 1-year rental, basically. But the Drew Estrada pickup is a little more telling of kind of what those older guys were to start the year, right? Because they were brought in he was brought in to essentially be the 3rd wide receiver.
Mm-hmm. And he was.
He was the whole year. So, very interesting. 8 wide receivers in the last 2 classes, and now potentially they take 4 more. I'm still of the belief it's only going to be 3. I think they really need to use that spot elsewhere. They have a bunch of receivers who do different things. I I don't know that they need to take 4, but we'll see. I just think cornerback is an area where they have got to, they're going to take guys. They're going to take at least 3, I think.
Yeah, corner is actually what I'm trying to finish right now. I was looking at last night, and yeah, it's you're losing Caitlyn Barnes, and you're losing Raleigh Tejada, obviously. Mark Milton coming back, big from an experience standpoint. Al Walcott's kind of like your star there now, potentially, with the way that he flashed. But then there's a bunch of guys that, we haven't really, A.J. McCarty and guys like that we'll learn a lot about this spring. Again, that'll be another position where they'll return a good bit of experience, but they're also losing a bit of experience. And so there will be that chance for, some guys to jump up and grab some playing time next year.
Yeah, and I mean, you need 2 guys, right? You need 2 starters, so you got to have depth behind them. And if you look at their defensive back depth chart, there are a lot of safeties. There are a ton of safeties.
That's what I realized right in the other article the other day was how many safeties there are.
A ton of safeties, whereas there's not a lot of cornerbacks, and it kind of makes you confused. Why did they take 3 safeties so early? But they like their 3 safeties a lot that they have in this class, but I just feel like they really need to focus on cornerback because, yes, you have McCarty, you have Chateau Reed, and you have Tevin Williams, and then, of course, Reggie Bush enrolling early is big. But I don't know how proven they are. Yeah. So they got to figure that out. So we'll see. But I do expect them to address that position even more, even though they do have Jakevian Rogers already committed.
Yep. So I'll get to see actually both of these commits in Baylor in Midway's district next year, as they will be not only with Pflugerville Weiss, but they will be with Temple as well. And Temple, the other school that Baylor heard from as far as commits go this week, is Taurean York, a linebacker, gave his pledge to the Bears, giving them their second commit over the last 7 days. He committed on, Friday? Yep. I think about Friday. But, yeah, a young man from Temple High School, same home of Ashton Logan, who now moves on. TJ Franklin will be back, but they've hit there recently. Franklin especially has been a big hit out of, being just down the road. But Taurean York, 6', 220. SMU, Tulsa, North Texas amongst his offers. What do you think of this pickup?
Yeah, and I mean, he mentioned Lake Seastrunk as well as a guy that he noticed out of Temple in his time at Baylor. And yeah, I think
Kevin Reese.
Yeah, a lot of guys definitely played at Baylor and had huge roles. And I think if you watch him play, he's so instinctual, right? So he's a guy who he plays much faster than his athletic capabilities really are. Like if he goes out and runs a 40 time, I think most times he's probably going to be in that 4.8 range, maybe even higher than that. Now, a lot of times that doesn't matter, though. I mean, look at Terrell Bernard. He's probably going to be a high 4.7, low 4.8 guy when he runs at the NFL Combine. But when you watch him play, he looks so much faster than that because he just is so instinctual with everything that he does. Taurean York, district defensive MVP this year, 141 tackles, 17 for loss, 4.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 5 fumble recoveries. The guy's just all over the field. And he's just making plays all over the field. He's been a 3-year starter for them. He'll be a 4-year starter next year. I'm expecting huge things from him again. And I just think this is one of those things where you can't stay it enough. They're trying to lock down Central Texas. That's what this Baylor staff is trying to do, and Taurean York brings them one step closer to that. And you also talk about his teammates with Mikhail Harrison-Pilot as well, the high-end 4-star guy. They're best friends. So, yeah, they're just continuing to try to build that connection. And I just want to make sure I clarify this. Taurean is a take by himself. He is a great player. He fits what they're trying to bring in at that Mike linebacker position, but also helps of the fact that he's at Temple, that he's friends with other high-end prospects, and that he's continuing Baylor's kind of motivation to lock down the Central Texas area.
Well, I mean, they've certainly made big strides there. They didn't really hit it originally. I think, though, being able to have the world open back up and hit the road recruiting, and then also the success they had, that certainly helps. And I think the local coaches here, they see the Bells getting hired or Brian getting hired, and Sean's been around now, obviously, but that doesn't hurt at all. And the new recruiters they brought in all seem to be pretty good at what they do. But, yeah, I mean, Devontae Tazzino out of the clean area, and they tried to get Kamari Terrell and obviously missed on him. But
got Monterey Baldwin. Yeah.
Monterey Baldwin got Taurean York. They're looking at Trey Wisner at Connolly. They would like to have him in this recruiting class, although he's got 2 years left, right?
No, he's 2023.
Is he at 20? Yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, because last –
but Kobe is at 2024, and they like Kobe too. Kobe Black.
Kobe Black. But, yeah, man, that was 2 years ago we did Connolly. Good Lord. Yeah. Kobe really has, warped my mind as far as, time stretches, when things were and whatnot. But, yeah, shoot, Trey Wisner's already – man, that's crazy. But, yeah, there's another guy who's high on people's radar and probably one of the most offered guys in the area, Trey Wisner. So, yeah, it's been a good time for Baylor to be located where they are in terms of talent coming out of this area. There's been stretches, but I think right now, and we've kind of touched on it before, but right now, these upcoming couple of years is maybe the best that it's been in terms of just all over the map. Guys getting Baylor offers. So, all right, there are your two new commits for the class of 2023, Taurean York and Micah Gifford. And so what's next in terms of 2023 and their focus in recruiting?
Yeah, so they're at 10 now. So double-digit commits now in the 2023 class. Taurean York gives them a second linebacker next to Christian Brathwaite, who committed a week before. York did. So they're filling out nicely there. I still think they're probably going to take two more linebackers. They're definitely going to have to take at least one jack, so an edge rusher type guy. They might end up taking three more linebackers. It just depends who commits. They're in a great spot right now with two very, very good linebackers in the state of Texas with Samaje Burrell and Darian Gillette out of Marlin. So they're definitely
another guy locally, Marlin and Darian Gillette.
He would make a lot of sense, and he can play every linebacker position. So he would be a guy who I just kind of look at and go, man, Baylor needs to find a way to land him. They need to find a way to land Mikael Harrison-Pilot, which I know that's a very tough ask for both of them because they have tons of offers, tons of programs definitely in the running for them. But those are two guys that I feel like Baylor has a great relationship with, and they're both very, very high-end prospects who I think could elevate this class to another level. I mentioned the cornerback position. They definitely have to address that. They only have one commit, and that's Shaquavian Rogers at that position. And then, of course, defensive line. They don't have a single defensive lineman committed yet. I expect them to take at least three, maybe four defensive linemen. They need a true nose tackle in this class, whether it's Demarion Thomas out of Tulsa Union or DK Kalu out of Ridgepoint. I think both of those guys would fit their mold really well at the nose tackle spot, especially since they kind of missed on nose tackle in the last class, unless you consider Trey Emery a nose tackle, which could be possible.
All right, elsewhere outside of recruiting, had the All-Star Games last week, wrote a little bit about, previewing those for the website, and you had four in the two All-Star Games. You had the Senior Bowl, and you also had the East-West game, and that was it. And by it, I don't mean that that's all. I mean, 8 guys is pretty massive considering we have not seen that kind of representation in a few years. But in the East-West Shrine game, you had Caitlyn Barnes, who I'm going to sneeze, I can tell.
Bless you.
Thank you. You had Caitlyn Barnes, not really a lot to write home about right there. I mean, I saw little things on him throughout the week. People liked his size or his speed, but nothing really in-depth on him that I noticed. Treston Ebner, I didn't realize if he played in that game.
I think he was dealing with an injury, so he didn't play.
So he, must have had that occur during the week because that was the first I had heard of that, and then, you just didn't hear about him. Xavier Newman Johnson, he did play in practice throughout the week, and he really made some strides for himself. I mean, he's looking at potentially getting drafted, which if you would have told people that before last season, I think 99% of people would have thought, no way. But that's the position he's starting to put himself into. So it was a big thumbs up for him for Shrine Bowl week. And Tyquan Thornton, 2 thumbs up for him. I mean, I think he's looking at getting himself drafted, and not going super high or anything, but he definitely turned some heads and had many saying that he was the best receiver during Shrine Bowl week. So stock up for Tyquan Thornton. And, as we get into these routines, maybe that's something I can kind of stock up, stock down kind of a thing when it calls for it, because obviously every week's not going to call for that in the build-up. But coming off a week like this, you can definitely say stock up for Tyquan, stock up for Xavier Newman Johnson. Treston, I'd say stock's probably holding, but it's pointed up for him. And for Caitlyn Barnes,
stock down.
Yeah, probably down, you'd have to say, coming out of the East-West Shrine game.
I would say, I think for Caitlyn, his big thing is going to be the combine, the pro game.
Yeah.
Like, people are going to have to fall in love with his athletic testing, I think, for him to get drafted at this point. I know Matt Alkire talked about Tyquan Thornton on 365 Sports, y'all's radio show, and it was really interesting how he thinks he could be a day 2 pick. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really interesting that he said that, because I think a lot of people were thinking, oh, he'll be lucky to get drafted, this and that. But I think he's a major riser. And then, of course, Xavier Newman Johnson probably went from a pickup after the draft to potentially getting drafted in maybe like the 7th or 6th round. Definitely a late pick. Which
would be a great story for Xavier. He really made a lot of big strides over the last year. So that was kind of the Shrine Bowl. Tyquan stock up, Xavier stock up, Ebner Holland, and Barnes got some work to do. Then there was a couple of days later the Reese Senior Bowl, which is the A game of the All-Star showcases. 4 more Bears were in that one. You had running back Abram Smith, linebacker Jalen Petrie, or safety Jalen Petrie, safety JT Woods, and linebacker Terrell Bernard. Terrell Bernard, stock holding, if not maybe pointed slightly down because he didn't play in this game. He got hurt. And so that was unfortunate, but injuries derailed him during Senior Bowl week, and he got hurt like pretty early on in the week too. Like, it was almost immediately, it seemed like that he was already sidelined. So I'm sure that will be a question mark that a lot of teams have, will be his injury history, because, I mean, good Lord, the guy's been through a lot, and, then you get to the All-Star game and boom, you're hurt again. So we'll see with Terrell Bernard, but I'd say stock up for the other 3. Abram Smith, I think, certainly improved his stock and his showing in front of NFL scouts and GMs. Jalen Petrie was probably the most talked about guy of the entire group in terms of just people wondering what to do with him or what you can do with him and where he fits in and all that kind of jazz. And then JT Woods, I'd say stock is up as well. A lot of the things Matt Rule predicted when he, got JT to commit in terms of the guys he was looking for, their size and their speed and, their ball skills and things like that. It's all paying off for JT in these NFL settings. So I'd say a successful All-Star game overall. The only guy, that's just a question is Bernard because of the injury. But the other 3, I think all 3 are going to be drafted coming up in April.
Yeah, and Abram, really a nice game, scored that touchdown as well, had, I believe, 11 carries for 48 yards, and then, of course, that 20-yard reception touchdown. So, yeah, he looked great. I think he's going to get drafted by someone, like you said. He's going to have to go to a place that he's going to be a scheme fit, though. I think the wide zone scheme really fits him well. I know I've been listening to some Falcons beat writers wanting the Falcons to take Abram Smith potentially. So that'd be an interesting fit with what they're trying to do. I think Jalen Petrie's on fire right now. That guy, I mean, he went from possibly a 3rd or 4th round pick in some people's eyes to like he's squarely in the 2nd round now, which would be absolutely fantastic if he ended up being a round 2 pick. That'd be incredible. Terrell Bernard, I'm curious what happens there. He's going to need to put on a pretty good show at Pro Day and the Combine to really get his draft stock to where it needed to be, I think, coming into the Senior Bowl or coming off of the Senior Bowl. I think they're in a great position to have a lot of guys drafted, which is kind of a rare thing to say. JT's worked himself into potentially being a day 2 pick as well. So I really like what I've seen from him. I mean, it's really exciting to see all these guys going to these bowl games and really getting a lot of attention because, frankly, a lot of Baylor guys haven't gotten that attention in recent years.
Yeah, they really have, and it's been dry to say the least, when it comes to NFL draft talk the last couple of seasons. I mean, William Bradley King was kind of like an adopted son in so many ways because he was here for such a short amount of time, and it was during the weirdest year of all time. So, you know, he's a Baylor guy that counts, but he was like the only guy to talk about last year, basically. And a couple years before that, you had Rule's last class. So you had like Bravion and James Lynch and those guys, and that was pretty good. But I think this group's got a way bigger opportunity to turn some heads over this process. So there's football for you. And there was, one other note, and that's the fact that Clay Johnson's got a chance to win a Super Bowl ring this week as the Bengals take on the Rams in Los Angeles. Will be the road team in a Super Bowl, which I know a lot of people have pointed out that we never saw that for years and years and years, and now we're getting, 2 years in a row of a team playing in their home city. So that's kind of strange. And so Cincinnati, I'm sure will be going in there, feeling like an underdog in so many ways, but that's been their story. And if you're an underdog, it'd be great to have Joe Burrow as your quarterback because that seems to work out well. But best of luck to Clay Johnston. And if you want to hear his thoughts on making the Super Bowl, I was putting some stuff together for it, but the radio interview is up on the website, and I'm trying to get some notes to take away from that as well that are of interest, kind of a summary thing. We'll see. But he was good, and he's Clay, and he's excited and fired up to be in the position that he's in. So best of luck to him coming up on Sunday. Yeah,
I'm happy for him. It seems like that change of scenery really made a huge difference in just his mindset and honestly his life. Mm-hmm. He needed a clean start, and I think with Cincinnati he's gotten that, and clearly the special teams role has been really, really fun for him. So I'm excited to see if they can get it done. I'm cheering for the Rams personally, but I think it'll be a really fun game.
Yes, it will. At least hopefully. I don't want a stinker in the Super Bowl. No. We've been there, done that. Would be great to have some of the games we've had here over the last 2 weeks. A game just like any of the last couple rounds of the playoffs would be fantastic and a great way to end the season. So there's football for you. Well, I guess one more thing, and then we really do have to move on and get to some other stuff. But Baylor announcing all their staff hires, their finalized hires, as they made some moves this offseason, obviously. Dave Aranda having to retool in front of and behind the scenes as well. So just running over some of the hires that were made official. Ronnie Wheat, safeties and special teams coach. Dallas Baker, wide receivers coach. Tyler Foster, associate director of player personnel. Aaron Hunt, promoted assistant AD of scouting. Connor Morgan, coordinator for player personnel. Kiava Soil Cormier, associate AD for player personnel. Monique Felix, associate director of football ops, and Jeff Grigas. And if I'm saying any of these names wrong, I'll learn, but I just, but Jeff Grigas, director of football operations. So a couple of new coaching hires in Wheat and Baker. We've talked about them quite a bit. Aaron Hunt's been around now for a little while. And then, a lot of these are new faces or new hires in so many ways. Some LSU ties in some cases. Tyler Foster, very well known in the coaching circles around here. Very well-connected guy in recruiting. What can you tell us, or what are your thoughts on some moves we already knew about or have talked about on the board or on this show, but that the university has finally made official?
Yeah, and Foster was an offensive analyst at Kansas State previous to this year as well. So, I think they really focused on the recruiting department, right? Vince Ginta is on his way to Nebraska now, and so they decided to make some changes here. James Blanchard's at Texas Tech, so they had to figure out a way to kind of revamp that recruiting department, and they've done so really well. I think you bring people from LSU, I think that always is probably a nice start. They know Dave Aranda well, know what he likes, know what he doesn't like, and I think they're going to mesh really well. So I'm excited about those hires. We talked about the Ronnie Weed and Dallas Baker hires. Those are, I think, going to be kind of really good hires, and we're going to know more about them in the future. But I think the recruiting ones are very specific to right now, and getting all those people kind of ready to go for junior day and now heading into spring and then the summer. It's going to be really, really important that they have these clearly defined roles, make sure everything is extremely organized, and go out and try to land the best class possible for 2023.
Yeah, I saw a lot of, going back to Foster and his high school ties, I saw a lot of people excited and fired up to see that graphic, or at least it seemed that way. I saw a lot of people commenting on him and, referring to him as a future rising star in the business and things like that. So, it seems like they're And I saw that for others as well. Like Monique Felix, I saw LSU people for Cormier. They were like, oh, what a great hire. So it seems like they all, were loved where they were and will be looked at as losses. But those losses are Baylor's gain, hopefully. So, yeah, Dave Aranda rounding out the staff and making some changes finalized now. So elsewhere, going on to basketball, and the Baylor men now finding themselves like on the fringe of the top 10 as they got embarrassed last Saturday against Kansas on the road in Lawrence. The number 8 Bears absolutely beat up, bloodied, blistered, and bruised on their way back to Waco, 83-59, and that was a favorable score for them when all was said and done. Could have been worse, and hard to imagine how, but it could have been worse, believe it or not. So now 19-4 on the year are the Baylor men. They are now the number 10 team in the country, and they have a road game against Kansas State coming up on Wednesday, and then it'll be back-to-back top 25 games. A home game against a Texas team that just beat Kansas at home, and then Texas Tech on the road in Lubbock. So you could, if you're not careful, be looking at 3 straight losses if you don't watch out. But man, you play anybody the way you played on Saturday, Grayson, and you're going to look at a bunch of losses. That was not pretty.
No, it wasn't. I mean, honestly, if they play anyone like they did against West Virginia either, I mean, they didn't play great against them either, and were able to squeak away with a win. Now, they didn't have Adam Flagler or LJ Cryer in that West Virginia game, so it's a little more understandable. But that Kansas game, I mean, my goodness. I think Scott Drew mentioned they haven't played that bad in like five or 6 years. I mean, it's been a long time since they've been beaten like that. Kansas just killed them from start to finish. They outplayed them. They out-hustled them, out-efforted them, destroyed them on the glass. It just was really an uninspiring performance. Adam Flagler, James Akinjo, and Dale Bonner combined for 0 points at halftime and were 0 of 14 from the floor. And then, thank the Lord, Adam Flagler got it together in the second half, or else this would have been even worse. He had 16 points in the second half after getting bageled in the first half. And Dale Bonner had 6 points as well in the second half, whereas James Akinjo finished with 0 points, 0 of 11 from the floor, 3 assists, 3 turnovers. It was his worst game as a Baylor Bear at the worst time. Good news for Baylor is, though, on their way back home, they got a little surprise this week when Kansas fell to Texas, so now they're only a game and a half back of first place in the Big 12, which is actually not a bad place to be.
No, but here comes Texas, and Texas Tech is playing well, or they continue to play well. But, it does feel like Chris Beard and them are starting to get a little bit of mojo because now they're getting wins that matter. Like beating Kansas is a big deal for their resume and their record. And so, yeah, it's going to be a dogfight all the way to the very end. But you just hope they shake off whatever's ailed them these last couple games. And really what's ailed them all year has been health as well. But, it is what it is, and it kind of has grown almost tiresome to talk about their health at this point because it's been the story every single week, it seems like, this entire season.
Yeah, it's just really weird, though. We talk about health, and their health has been a problem, and LJ Cryer hasn't been there. But to be honest, LJ, for as great as he is on offense, he's not an elite defender.
No.
This team is not defending well at all. I mean, they're giving up a ton of points. They gave up in these last 3 games, they've given up 87, 77, and 83 points. I mean, they're not protecting the rim. They're not guarding the ball well. They're giving up easy second chance points. That's the weirdest part to me is I understand they have an injury. I understand that LJ Cryer's not playing and that affects them on offense. But to be honest, they should be playing much better defense than they've been playing. That's been really disappointing to me. And when you come out and don't play with effort, that's not an injury problem.
No, it's not. And the injuries have been the biggest storyline. But no, there was definitely an energy issue. And there's a bit of a leadership vacuum. And there's a toughness vacuum. That's all, a step down from last year. And I kind of said this on the show yesterday, but it's like we also have to be careful. We're comparing them to a national championship team. It's like they're not the same team as last year. It's like, you mean the team that won the freaking national championship? Yeah, they're not.
And dealt with no injuries.
And had COVID bumps, but it was like not, they were able to get over them relatively quickly for the most part and kind of get on their way and not miss too much of a beat. But like this team has a leadership vacuum. were like not just one guy left, but like 4 guys left. And I thought it was kind of crazy talk when people were, bringing up like being better than last year and stuff early in the year, and just like, all right, we'll see. But I think it's very clear like that maybe talent, like pure natural talent wise, you could like make that argument, but in every other area, it's not even close right now. And they got a lot of work to do between now and whenever the end of their run is. If they play like they did the last couple games, it'll be a very quick run to the end. But there's still time to, dig down and, answer some questions. I mean, they're like, I don't want to make them out to sound like they're a bad team because they lost the game, but I also, want to be realistic of like, yeah, like, we talk championships and stuff all we want to, but that was not championship basketball on Saturday. That's going to get them booted out of the, whatever tournament you're talking about relatively quickly. They play that way. So they got some work to do.
Yeah, and this game in Manhattan, make no mistake about it, this is a must-win. And it's not a must-win just because Big 12 title hopes. It's not a must-win just because, Baylor's trying to get a number 1 seed. It's a must-win because they just got demolished by Kansas, unlike they've gotten demolished by anyone in the last few years. Now it's about how do you respond? Does this team have the grit, the toughness to go on the road in their second game in the state of Kansas and go in and get a win against a team that is definitely inferior to them? And can they go out and take it? And we'll see. We'll see if they can do that or not. Because if they don't, I think my expectations for this team going forward are definitely going to come way back down to earth.
Yep, so K-State up next for the Baylor men coming up on Wednesday night, and we'll see if they are able to bounce back, but they really need to in a major way. And, of course, that Big 12 schedule, as I mentioned, doesn't get any easier with Texas and then Texas Tech and, even TCU. Like, that's a feisty team you got to watch out for if you don't play well. And
yeah, they had a bad week, but they were playing really well.
Yeah, before last week they were, they were doing well for themselves. We don't talk about TCU basketball. They're giving you some reasons to talk about them. And you still got Kansas again. You got another matchup with Texas around the corner and Iowa State. And so, yeah, better get it in order. But, not pressing the panic alarm just yet either at the same time. But
yeah, and that game against Texas this weekend is also going to be a really important one just because Texas has been really, really good at home, but really, really bad on the road. So that's going to be a big thing for Baylor as well.
And they're going to muck it up and, hope the officials let them play and be super physical. And, and if the officials let them play and let them, let it get dirty, then, Baylor's going to have to be physical and nasty and be able to respond to that. And, years like last year, you'd be like, all right, no problem. But this year, a little bit more of a question mark on whether or not they will. All right, so the Baylor men looking to get back on track as they continue Big 12 play. And then for the Baylor women, how about 2 in 3 days against Texas? I was not expecting the Lady Bears to go and win both games against number 13 UT. They went out and they won the first one at the Farrell Center on Friday night, and I thought, okay, good, they got one. They'll probably go to Austin now and lose. And that's not being, Peggy pessimist or anything. That's just like being realistic of, you play team twice in 3 days, and the first game you had to kind of come back to win that game. Just figured you'd go on the road and, not crazy to think they might lose that game, but the dominance over UT continues for the Baylor women's basketball program as Nikki Collin and company, 75-63 on Friday night. Turn around, go to Austin, had to dig out of a hole, and end up winning 63 to 55. So 2 wins over the Longhorns for the Baylor women after that brutal loss to Oklahoma last week, which, man, if they could have just won that game, they'd be on quite the run right now. But still, I mean, back-to-back top 25 wins over the same team in 3 days. That's not easy. They now have K-State coming up on Wednesday at the Farrell Center, but nice weekend for the Baylor women.
Yeah, they were 5 seconds away from being 3-0 a week against ranked teams. So close to winning that Oklahoma game. So now they're a game and a half back of first place in the Big 12. They still have Iowa State on their schedule, so a chance to make up some ground there as well. But that was honestly a really good week for them. I mean, when you rebound from a game-winning shot loss, it's tough sometimes, because you come out the next game and you're kind of deflated. They did not play like that. They played really, really well in that game at the Farrell Center, really dominated that game, I felt like, for large stretches. And then in the second game on the road in Austin, they had to overcome a deficit, and they were able to do that and then take over the game in the second half. So really impressed with them. Nalissa Smith just dominant, absolutely dominant in that game in Austin. She was fantastic, continues to prove herself as one of the best players in the entire country. She might end up winning Player of the Year. We'll see how they finish. But I was really impressed with the Bears, the women's basketball team. I think they're really trending in the right direction. And we've talked about this, but if you look at their schedule going forward, I mean, if they can get by this Kansas State game, they have a chance to win, maybe 6 or 7 in a row before that Iowa State game. That would be huge. And honestly, I think it gives them a great shot to win the conference again.
Yes, indeed. So good weekend for the Baylor women's basketball team. And before we get into the mailbag, Grayson, men's tennis with some big stuff over the weekend as well.
Yeah, they're 9-0 now. The number 2 team in the country knocked off Texas 4-0 in an indoor event in Waco at the Hawkins Indoor. Really impressed with this team. They're playing extremely well. They're playing together tennis, which is massive, and they're getting it done in a variety of ways. They're winning up top with Adrian Boitan and Matthias Soto, but then you go through the lineup. You still have Sven Law there, who's been good as well, but there are guys in the lower end of their lineup. Finn Bass is a guy who's played really well. Juan Pablo Grassi Masucci has played well. So they're really doing a nice job as a team, and they've been great in the doubles as well. So I've been impressed knocking off a top 10 team like that, especially the way that they did. Really, really impressive.
Yes, indeed. So tennis rolling along, men's and women's basketball, kind of hit or miss depending on, who you're looking at. Yeah. Women up, men down, but as we see, it takes one game, just flip that right around. So hopefully the women keep doing what they're doing and the men can get back on track. But before we get in the mailbag, anything else we're missing out on?
I don't think so, but if you are in Waco this weekend, go watch Baylor men's tennis, number 2 team in the country, take on the number 6 team in the country, Virginia. That's going to be a really, really good matchup, I think, and another possible statement game for this Baylor men's tennis team.
Yeah, it seems like they had a good crowd based on what I could tell on social media.
Yeah, that actually was something that stood out. I know I was watching the broadcast through Crooked Rackets or something, Cracked Rackets, and I was watching that, and you could kind of hear the crowd a little bit. So it seemed like a good environment.
All right, let's get in the mailbag this week. Got a bunch of questions, so let's roll right through. Starting off with Scotty B. The Baylor King, which former current football player does Taurean York, the newest commit for class of 2023, remind of the most? I saw Billy21 right underneath say Petrie. I'm assuming he's answering Scotty's question when he says Petrie.
Maybe. I don't see the Petrie comparison at all.
I'm just
honestly.
trying to. He responded to Scotty, so I'm just saying that I'm assuming he's talking about Petrie, is who Taurean York reminds him of.
Yeah.
For me,
for me, I don't see that. I think Petrie's faster, more athletic, just a different body type too. Taurean's going to be able to put on some weight and be a true Mike linebacker. Petrie never could really do that. He always hovered around that 205, 195 range for a lot of his career. So I don't see that comparison. I see Terrell Bernard as being the best comparison for York, but I kind of like this mixture. This is the mixture that comes to mind for me. And I know Colt posted Nick Bolton on the website as a comparison. The former DeSoto product, went to Missouri, now on the Chiefs. But Nick was a lot faster than Taurean. So I think Taurean's right in the middle. He's a little bit taller than Nick Bolton, not as tall as Terrell Bernard, going to put on the same weight as both. And he's not as fast as Nick, but he's got the instincts that both of them have. So I like that kind of combination as kind of a good comparison for Taurean York.
Also, how about number 2 Baylor men's tennis knocking off number 9 Texas 6-1? The crowd was just fantastic, and it would have been great to have that crowd on Saturday at 2 in a probable top 15 showdown against Virginia. So, yeah, we just kind of touched on that a little bit. And, yeah, I mean, whether it's basketball or tennis or whatever, the weather's starting to turn a little nice. I know it's that fake spring that's in right now because I'm sure we're going to get cold again here in the next week or so. But it's starting to show signs of waking up a little bit weather-wise. And so definitely go out and support. Like I think you've noticed this year more than any other, and you saw it with Tech and Texas in basketball the other night, or even Texas against Kansas last night. These crowds matter, man. And, it's not easy to get to everything, but if you're able to, go out and support, because it makes a world of difference. And, obviously you hear coaches and players mentioning it so often. It clearly makes a difference for them as well. I think Scott Drew's tired of talking about it at this point of anybody, but nice crowd for tennis. Let's see. Billy mentioned that, said in Petrie, Stat Boy, which Baylor basketball team will go deeper in March Madness, men or women?
I'm going to go with the men. I think that the men's ceiling is a little bit higher. I like the way the women's basketball team is playing, but for some reason, they seem vulnerable to me in the tournament. Like they could stumble and not play a great game and then lose. Whereas I think if this men's team is healthy, I think they're going to make the Elite Eight if they're fully healthy. Now, if they never get to that point, then it's going to be the women's team, though.
Yeah, I'd go with the men. The women are playing with fire with 7 players. Yeah. Health is a little bit. You're talking about health in the men. Like, they're missing guys. At least they have guys on the bench. The women barely have even that. But, yeah, I'll still go with the men. I think they're more built for a championship run, even if we haven't seen a ton of signs of that. I think we know that if they can get right, they can really be right. Whereas even if the Baylor women get super right or play at their best, Baylor men at their best, Baylor women at their best, I'm taking the Baylor men. That's what I'm trying to say. Let's see here. Scotty B said, if the men get healthy, I say the men, but if not, I could see both getting out Sweet 16 or Elite 8 at the same time.
Yeah, I could see same time. Yeah.
Baylor 1-2-3, ideal 23 class.
Ideal. So if you get asked ideal, do you think he's saying like my dream, or is this more trying to be like a realistic?
I say ideal would be real. There's got to be some realism in there, because I think dream class would just be a dream class, but ideal, I think you got to throw some realism in there.
Okay, so I guess the 10 commits they have, we'll just stick with those 10 and then go ahead and add from there. So it'll probably be roughly around 20 to 22 commits. They need a running back, so how about we go with Amarian Peterson, the running back out of Hershey? I think he'd be a good add. He was at the junior day. I think they'll take 2 more wide receivers. So how about Mikhail Harrison Pilot? And this is a little bit of a long shot, but I'd love it if he was in this class. Ryan Niblett out of Aldine Eisenhower. He's been a notable target. So that's three additions to the class. I know they want to take a second tight end. That just seems to be what they want to do. They offered 2 tight ends this week. So I'll go with Reid Mckeska out of Bridgeland, because he visited for junior day. So that's 4 additions. Offensive line, they're going to have to at least take 2 more. I'll go with Jaden Chapman out of Harker Heights, and then Calvin Clements out of Free State, which is in Kansas. So I had 2 more there. That gets us to 6 additions. DK Kalu out of Ridge Point. He'll be the nose tackle for this class. I really like his game. At defensive end, how about Ansel Nadore out of Round Rock? He was in the studio over junior day weekend. I really like him. I think he'd be a really nice pickup. And then how about Jaron Woods out of LaGrange? So we'll go with him. And then later on in the cornerbacks, I'm going to add Bravion Rogers as well out of LaGrange. So maybe the LaGrange duo there. At linebacker, we'll add Darian Gillette out of Marlin. That would be a really nice pickup. Obviously, a very tough one to land, but I think he'd be a really good fit. I'll add Corey Kelly at the jack position. He's out of Clear Falls. I think he'd be a really good pickup. And then cornerback, which is the last position to fill out, I said Bravion Rogers out of LaGrange. And then I'll go ahead and go with Jalen Braxton out of Frisco Lone Star. I think he'd be a really nice pickup in addition to that cornerback position. And then the last one, how about Tayshawn Wilson out of Maid Creek? He'll be the last cornerback.
All right, there's your ideal 23 class, Baylor 1-2-3. Appreciate the question. Bear Coog, what is one thing you're impressed with the most so far from Miranda's recruiting for 22 and 23 classes? Is it the ability to go out and get big recruits from other talent-rich states like Florida, identification of size, and positional fit? What is one thing you're most impressed by?
Yeah, I think it's more the cohesiveness of the staff in general. So they're obviously recruiting with the Sugar Bowl and Big 12 championships now. So they have a lot more to recruit with. And I think they're just more cohesive as a staff, and it's allowing them to go out and really build really solid relationships with recruits in the area and out of state. I think they've done a really nice job building those relationships. So I'm just going to kind of keep it really simple and say that that's the biggest area that I see those relationships. I think, identification of size, positional fit, I see that as well. I think they're doing a nice job with that, taking guys that really fit what they're trying to build. Now, as far as recruits from other states, I mean, sort of, George Miley out of Utah, that was a nice one. I think, Alfonso Allen out of Florida, I don't know that was really a heavily competed one. I think they kind of went in there late and were able to land him, but I'm not sure that I'm sitting here saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that. Not quite yet, but I do think in these future classes, there's a chance that they're able to go out of state, land some guys, and maybe that becomes more of a mantra for the staff.
Barracoog also asked, what are your thoughts on Sarkey UT having to hire big-name past head coaches for advisory roles on his staff? First Patterson, now Cutcliffe from Duke. I don't think I've ever seen an advisory team to the head coach formed to this extent. Have y'all ever seen this before? And if so, does it work? Alabama's done it. They've had Charlie Strong and Bill O'Brien and all sorts. They're full run of head coaches. Texas is just trying to be Alabama. You think about the Sarkisian hire and you think about who everybody's going after. They're going after Alabama, and Texas is somebody that can actually afford to do that, and they're moving to the SEC. And, dude, they're very calculated and smart, and they're making moves to try to basically be Alabama. And that's what everybody's trying to do, but only so many can actually afford to do it. And I don't think Baylor could probably swing bringing in David Cutcliffe and Gary Patterson, and maybe they could,
while paying players $50K,
while paying your O-line, who haven't even played a down yet, $50K a piece. And they're going all out, man. They're going balls to the wall. Truly, and doing everything that they can to be what they want and pretend to be all the time. So I don't see anything wrong with it. I think maybe you could say that it does say some things about maybe where they view themselves. I don't know, but I can't really knock them for doing it when Alabama's been doing it for years and others have been doing it as well. But I think maybe desperation's not the right word, but they're all in right now. Between Quinn Ewers and $50K offensive linemen and Patterson and Cutcliffe joining analyst
and
roles.
Bijan Robinson's last year.
Yeah, come on now. If they don't win 10 games, then and I don't know I'm sure there will probably be some measured, we don't want to, there will probably be some people well, if they just win 9 games, to kind of keep the expectations in check. But man, they've made a bunch of moves. They have, and it's so weird that they're bringing in Sarkisian's predecessors already off the streets. I'm kidding, but in all seriousness, it's smart of them. I think Sark. I think it's good when you have a lot of really smart minds, as long as they don't kind of bump heads with each other, because that's always the problem. Whereas at Alabama, it's pretty much known. Nick Saban hires you, he's the law, he's the guy, and there's not much arguing with him. So he's just bringing in great minds, and everyone's able to contribute, and it's able to build this great product. We'll see if Texas is able to do that. I'm very curious about it. I think they've actually made pretty good moves with these hires. I think it will help them for this season, but will that allow them to win the Big 12 championship? I don't think so. So at the end of the day, is it worth it then? I don't know. That's to be determined, I think. Yeah, I think we got to see how the next few years play out. If they play in it next year, or if they win it next year, it was all worth it. If they play in it next year and then the year after they exit, it all just kind of depends. But they're gearing up for that SEC exit eventually, and they're gearing up for, they don't want to go out like they did this year. Can you imagine if this is the last year of the Big 12 and that was their swan song?
Yeah.
I think they're going to do everything they can to prevent being laughed at on their way out in the next couple of years. And again, it's that era in college football now where you can pretty much do anything too. So they're doing it to their full extent and recruiting as best they can. And then coaching wise, it is very interesting to see, who they brought in, because it wasn't just these analyst roles. There's a bunch of assistant coaching changes as well. So we'll see how it works out for them. Ashley Hodge, which Baylor men's basketball player are you selling short this week? I need to know who's going to have a big game Wednesday night. I think this is in reference to Dale Bonner and your discussion last week.
I sold him short last week, and he did not have a good week. There was not much impressiveness, so I don't know what I don't know what he's telling me here. And I mean, I guess it just stinks that I'm having to sit here and go against Dale Bonner every single week. And it's all because Ashley keeps bringing it up. But, at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to have a great week this week. And if LJ Cryer comes back, his role will be limited to probably, 10, 12 minutes, which sounds about right. I think that would be good for this team and good for his role to where he's not having to play 30 minutes a game. That's not his game right now. And that's okay to admit. He's going to excel at some point. I mean, we've seen Scott Drew develop guys for years, but at this very moment, it just has not worked out. And obviously everyone's talked about the offensive side of his game, but he's also been giving up a lot of points defensively as well. I mean, he's part of the reason why they're giving up so many points along with the other guys on the roster. So I think at the end of the day, this team will figure it out. And I think this week they're going to figure it out. Hopefully LJ comes back for at least one or two of these games. And I think they're going to right this ship and get it all together. So I'm not selling anyone this week. This team just needs to come together and not be a team that I'm selling, if that makes sense.
Dak JD90 said Kendall Brown, the 18-year-old kid, was clearly the only Bear who came to play the first 10 minutes of the Kansas game. He will continue to improve, and I look forward to seeing it. So there was from Dak.
Yeah, I think that's important to just mention. Kendall played very solid and was much more aggressive than he had been in the past. I was impressed with him, and if he continues to play like that when Cryer comes back, I think it will only mean good things for this team. His athleticism was very apparent.
Ryan Allen Long, I noticed A&M offered 2025 quarterback Roy Thomas Jenkins out of Beaumont a couple weeks ago. Was Baylor starting to work on 2025 recruiting as well? Curious as to how far out schools start to work on their different recruiting classes in general.
Yeah, so Baylor has 3 offers out right now in the 2025 class. A&M has 7, but I just kind of want to just kind of mention the simple fact that Baylor doesn't really need to offer guys super far out. The reason I'm saying that is like A&M has 4 of their offers to out-of-state prospects who are probably going to be 5-star guys, so you have to offer them, when everyone else is offering them, or else you're just going to be way too late to the party. Whereas for Baylor, they're more focused on scouting and evaluating and making sure that the offers are good, especially for guys that young. It's really hard to predict how those guys are going to develop unless you see them in person and have numbers on them, testing times on them. So Baylor's been a little more patient, but still 3 offers. A&M has 7. There's not a huge disparity there. So they're evaluating 2025s for sure. I don't think they've gotten to 2026 quite yet, though.
All right, a couple more. Bumbling Bear, do you have a list of the Bears that have received a combine invite? Yeah, 0 so far. There's not been any combine invites for any Baylor players that I've seen. There are invites starting to go out. There's maybe a dozen or so names that I've seen that have apparently been extended offers, but in terms of the Baylor guys, I have seen no word on any official combine invites, but that's something that will, start to come out over the next days, weeks, whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure Petrie will get invited. I mean, if he's going to be
I'm sure Petrie, Abram, I'd say, Taekwon probably. I mean, if I had to guess, I'd say Bernard, and Bernard's even starting to get a little weird, but I mean, as far as my feeling of my strong feelings of him, but I'd say he probably still gets invited, especially because he didn't play in the Senior Bowl. Right. I think there'd be even more reason to have him out there. But if I had to put money on it, I'd say Taekwon probably, Petrie for sure, JT for sure,
Abram,
and those guys I'd feel really confident about, and like maybe Xavier after the week that he had, but I don't think all 8 guys are getting invited.
I think 5. The ones you named in Bernard. I think those are the 5.
That makes sense, yeah. But no, to answer your question, Bumbling Bear, no, but I'll keep track of it. I know others probably will as well, and I'm sure it'll be a nice little list when all is said and done. No word on Pro Day either. No idea when Pro Day is supposed to be scheduled, which is fine because you don't need a lot of heads up for that, but it is February 8th, so I would imagine we're going to we'll probably hear something in the next couple weeks or something along those lines. So yeah, we'll start gearing up. There'll be a lot of NFL stuff coming up with these former Baylor players. And Bear Sim 15, we'll close this out. Might be late posting, but I was curious if Grayson knew very much about the recruitment of Harris Sewell, offensive lineman out of Odessa Permian for 23. 247 has him cooled towards Baylor and warm to schools like Bama, UT, A&M, etc. Has the Big 12 Championship, Sugar Bowl, 4 returning players, Mateos, or any other factor over the last 6 months made him take Baylor more seriously for his growth and development? I'm only curious because I'm from Odessa and he's a hot name out here. Matt Jones may also help recruit him to Baylor as well. Thanks, guys. Well, thank you, Bear Sim 15.
Yeah, I'm going to currently go with no, and the reason why I say that is because he didn't visit at all last summer, despite making a ton of trips all over. He even visited Tech, and he didn't visit Baylor. So I think that says a lot, right? And then during the season, he didn't visit either, even though Baylor was having this magical season.
And not even Joey McGuire's Tech, like the Matt Wells Tech.
Yeah, Matt Wells Tech. Now, he is in Odessa, so I get, right. So I think that's just where I'm at right now. I don't see him having much Baylor interest. He's really blown up on the recruiting trail. I don't see Baylor being a major player in his recruitment. We'll see if that changes. We will know very soon, because if he doesn't visit for a spring practice or if he doesn't visit this summer, then you can officially rule him out. But I would say that the odds of Baylor even becoming an option for him are very, very low at this point.
All right. So thank you, Bear Sim 15, for closing us out. Also, thank you to Bumbling Bear, Ryan. Thanks to Bear Coog, Baylor 123, Scotty B, Stat Boy, Billy as well. And if you ever have questions and you want to get them in, the timelier the better. But hey, just kind of freestyle and want to throw something out there each week. Grayson usually has a thread open on Mondays or so in the premium section where you can get your question in for the podcast each week. So a lot going on. Baylor women take a couple against Texas, but have some more work to do. Baylor men have a lot of work to do as they try to just get back on track. Baylor football starting to cross T's and dot I's with some of their offseason moves, but a lot left in store there. And then obviously the road to the draft for a lot of Baylor guys just now getting underway as well. And got men's tennis going on, and just never stops the Baylor athletics world, it seems like. So we're right in the middle of spring, or getting close to being in the middle of spring, and so we're going to be busy with a lot to talk about. So thank you for joining us along on the ride. Thanks to Jack McKenzie behind the scenes. And anything before we go, Grayson?
No, nothing really. It's an exciting week. Hopefully basketball continues to, the women's team continue to ride the momentum. The men really pick it up this week. And it's just an exciting time. Spring sports are always fun. I'm excited for baseball to get going. Tennis is already in the middle of their season. So, I think it's a great time to be a Baylor sports fan.
All right, so until next time, we'll see what happens this week, and be back in a few days to talk all about it. And, of course, in the meantime, in between time, we'll be on the website and on the radio. So check out Sic'Em 365 Radio and Sic'Em365.com and join that premium section if you haven't already. And Baylor students, an offer for you to join up for free. If you check out Colt Barber's latest tweets, you can see exactly how to do that by following a link on the website, and you can become a member of Sic'Em 365 Premium just for being a Baylor active student. So definitely take advantage of that as well. But for Jack and Grayson, I'm Craig Smoke. This has been the Bearcast on Sic'Em365.com.